Well, we're just listening to a little music while we're waiting for Amazon to catch up and go live here. But we are out there on LinkedIn and YouTube for a moment, waiting for Amazon. We'll hear from Cathy Dirksen, and you'll want to get published with her. So stand by. We're still waiting for Amazon to catch up. All right, there we go. Amazon finally caught up, and let's see, and the music. And you can see we've got the graphic here with Cathy Dirksen, and she is a top-selling international best-selling author, speaker. You can get published with her, and you can see some of the books that she's done here: 20 Shades of Grief, Midlife Reimagined, Passion, Purpose, Possibilities. Those are just a few of the books. And with that, Cathy, welcome to Amazon Live.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's funny. The technology just takes a little bit sometimes to catch up with here we are. And as I mentioned, we've got highlighted right now in the carousel 20 Shades of Grief. But first, let's go in and get just an overview of who you are. What's going on?
All right. Well, it's been about almost 5 years now that I've been focused on publishing as the main thing that I do. And really my passion is really getting stories out there with that idea that really we can create a lot of impact through our stories, whether inspiring, motivating, sharing. I find, quite often in life, if we're having challenges, we tend to feel like we're alone in those challenges. And when we read and hear stories of other people who have come through similar things, then it just helps us to feel like, okay, maybe I'm not alone. Maybe somebody else does understand. And so I find that just sharing our stories is so powerful.
So it's sharing the stories, but also the resolution that people have can also help provide to say that, yeah, people, not only are they going through things that I'm going through, they found a way out. They found a way through.
Yes, exactly. And lately I've been kind of laughing because if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I saw myself getting into publishing and having a collection of books with my name on the cover, I would have laughed at you, because there was really nothing in my past lives that pointed in this direction. And it really was through following a calling and an intuitive knowing that this was what I was supposed to do next.
All right. So let's just put out there right now, what is your email in case someone wanted to get a hold of you? Or what's a good way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my website is inspiredtenacity.com. And my email is Cathy with a C, so CATHY at inspiredtenacity.com.
All right. And so I wanted to get that out there because people may, as we're going through, may want to reach out, because you don't just sit and write books on your own. You gather stories from a lot of authors. So tell us about that process. What does that look like?
Yes. So all of my books have roughly 20 people, and they can come from anywhere in the world. And so basically each person writes one chapter. In my books, I like to focus on 2,500 words, which is about 4 to 5 pages in a paperback. And so each one writes one chapter based on their own personal journey, what they've come through, what they've learned along the way. And then, yes, we put the whole collection together and publish that. And it really is a great way for starting out as a published author. It's a very time-efficient way of getting yourself out there. It's a fraction of the time and the energy and the content and the cash involved in getting published if you try to do your own solo book. So yes, so 20 people. Most of my books are focused on women, but I have a few books that are co-ed.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, you have a project coming up scheduled to be released later this year, toward the end of the year, that there's still room for authors in that one.
Yes. I've got a few right now, but the one that we're working on together is called Intentional Perspective, Finding Joy When Life Gets Messy.
Mm.
So that one will include men and women, again, from all over the world, each sharing their own story and how they've learned to find joy in their life and how they can, share that with the reader in a way. And really the big goal is to really focus on amplifying joy in the world. And I believe that joy is contagious. Being around joyful people makes you more joyful. Learning about how to create joy helps you create joy. So that's the big focus here. So we'd love to have you join us.
So just to remind everybody, we've got the international best-selling author, Cathy Dirksen. She's also a speaker. You get published with Cathy, and Inspired Tenacity, Cathy at inspiredtenacity.com. Reach out and get information, get details. Let's go right into this first book we've got highlighted in the carousel, which is 28 Shades of Grief. Tell us the background on that book and who might want to buy it.
Yes. That one was inspired by a friend of mine who had lost her son a few years ago to suicide. And needless to say, it completely changes a mother's life when she loses a child in that way. And since that, she has completely reinvented her life to focus on now helping other people get through periods of grief in their life and understand grief. And she really inspired me to realize that that's another example of how we can share our stories and what our experience has been and really help other people get through those kinds of things. So that one is a very international collection. That one's got men and women in it as well. And each one, again, is sharing their own journey on how grief has impacted their life, and then also on how they're helping other people to cope with their own grief or find their way through.
There's a lot of different types of grief. I mean,
yes.
A mother losing a child. Talk about some of these different types of grief that are told about in this book, 20 Shades of Grief, and it's right there in the carousel, so people can click. Just remind you, if you click it, it's going to open a new tab. You can hit add to cart. One of the great things about being here on Amazon is you can be the hero. Maybe you know somebody who's dealing with grief right now. Put their name and address in and just send them the book. It's an easy thing to do. You can do it right here on Amazon. So let's talk about the different types of grief that we learn about in 20 Shades of Grief.
Yes. And yes, as you said, that's kind of right in the title of the book, the idea that grief isn't just one thing. Grief is different for everybody. And there are examples like I mentioned with the key featured author who had lost her son to suicide. There's examples of women who have lost miscarriages or stillborn. And that's one that's really tough because, when we lose a child after they're born, our society assumes that we need to grieve and get over it. I didn't mean it quite that way, but, that we are acknowledged as being allowed to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you lose a child before they're born, our society doesn't treat it the same way. And these mothers and fathers as well are left really having to figure out, how do I deal with this? Because really it is a massive grieving process. And another example in the book is someone who is grieving for the childhood they didn't have. They had quite a horrendous upbringing and had a mother that had a lot of mental health problems, and their whole life was around dealing with that. And so really it was how they later in life were grieving how their childhood hadn't been, really what it could have been. And let's see, I'm just look at the book here and see what else we've got. Actually, one of the other ladies in the book, she has a very special skill, an intuitive skill, where she speaks to pets that have passed. And communicates that back to the owners about, how is that pet doing? How were they feeling? And so that's a very different perspective on grief in that book.
Pets are an important part of our life. And I think the statistics indicate that, as a country, we spend more on pet food than on baby food. So
Yeah.
just to give people an idea. That's a very important part of our lives.
Yes, yes. And in my chapter too, I really kind of open that up in that way that I mentioned a few different aspects of grief that have come into my life. And the loss of a dog has been a huge one for me. A couple of the dogs I've had, they've been with me for 13 years, 16 years, and they'd been through major life changes with me, divorces, career changes, depression, all these things. And so that dog was my rock, So yes, I agree that our dogs are a much bigger part of our life than we realize, or that our society allows us to really acknowledge. But one of the other grief that I really pointed out in my chapter was the grief that I think we are going through right now as a culture, as a community, the grief of loss of stability, loss of what we used to depend on, loss of having government systems that we felt safe with. And so really, I think right now we're almost in an epidemic of grief as a community that is not being acknowledged.
So these are so again, this is a very just important subject for people to realize that when we think of grief, maybe it does come down to the loss of a loved one, but there are a lot of things that I will say inflict trauma on our lives.
Yeah. Yes, and these days too, loss of a job, loss of a career. Those create massive grief that, again, we're not, as a culture, we're not told we're allowed to grieve. We're supposed to just pull up our socks and get moving.
Right. And let's talk about, because this is going to be a good general topic for the books in general, and we'll talk about some of the others here and remind people, Cathy Dirksen, international best-selling author right here on Amazon today. She's a speaker. You can reach out to Cathy and learn how to publish your book. And we're talking about, a lot of times it is first-time authors, people who feel they have a book in them, but it is an overwhelming process to do that. What's it like? And what's it like for a new author, someone who's like, I want to publish a book. A whole book is too much, but I can write a chapter.
Yes, exactly. And with the books that I do through the program that I incorporate, really writing their chapter is the only thing they need to worry about. Everything else is looked after for them. And so we've got a professional team who does all the editing, proofreading, formatting. They create our marketing materials. They get us all set up on Amazon. They do the whole Amazon launch campaign with us. And then in this whole process, it's because this, of course, can take over several months altogether. And in that time, I also bring the group together as a community. So they have opportunities to meet the other authors through group chats, through group Zooms, and those kinds of things. We bring in opportunities for speaking, whether it's podcasts and summits and those kind of things. So it really becomes a community event and a way of doing something together, which I think a lot of people, that's one of the feedback that I've got several times in my books, that they loved the community that was created in this process.
So it gives people an opportunity to see what it's like, what the components are that go in. They don't have to be responsible for all the different aspects of it. And they may choose to publish a book on their own. I think this kind of book is an addictive process. Many people that I know that have done collaborative books can't wait for the next one. And they'll do a few a year because there are opportunities like with you here. Some people will never publish ever again. This was the one thing. They had a story they wanted to share. And so let's talk about Midlife Reimagined. That's the next book we have in the carousel. And let's talk about that book and who's that's for.
Yeah, so that one is specifically women only. So all of the stories in that one are women sharing how they've reached a time in life when they've realized what I'm doing is not what I want to keep doing. This is not what my passion is, and this is not what I can see myself doing. And whether it was a career change, whether it was a health change, whether it was a relationship change, or all of those things. And so they're really sharing both the turning point in their life when they realized that they needed to make big changes. They're sharing how they made those changes and what difference it made to their life, to their family, to their careers, to their communities. And so, and that book as well is a very international group of ladies that have come together in that one.
And so, although it's the content is directed at women, it is female authors in that. Probably a great book for the guys to read to get a perspective. Maybe.
Yes, that's a good point. And really, I think, obviously men and women have a slightly different story as life goes on, but a lot of the changes and the midlife shifts and the change in perspective, change in what our focus is, I'm sure are things that men and women share.
Yeah, and just to get an understanding into
Yes.
The people around you, whether it's a family member, spouse, neighbor, coworker, just more information and more learning is never a bad thing.
That's right. That's right. And
So
we always, I was just going to say, we always hear about the midlife crisis, but I prefer to look at it as a reimagining.
A friend of mine worked with a guy that bought a Sebring convertible, and he said that his wife referred to it as his midlife Chrysler. So anyway, let's get what are some of the stories that people would find in Midlife Reimagined? Because again, this is not just listing out, here's an issue that I came across, but here's a way that I found to get through it and get to it. And this is the thing I like about your books is that it's practical. You can go into any one of these books, you can look at the chapter, see what applies to you, and find hope and resolution.
No, exactly. And with the Midlife Reimagined, it's actually the second book in a series of midlife books. So the first one was Midlife Awakening. That was a couple of years ago. And now this one, Midlife Reimagined, came out around Christmas time last year. And now the next one we're working on is Midlife Reignited.
Okay.
So with the Midlife Reimagined, there are a few different stories. Some of them are around career change, where they have, spent decades in a corporate job and just felt frustrated and burnt out, and just that this was not what they saw themselves doing, and they've rediscovered something else. We had one woman that worked in chemistry her whole life, and then realized that she actually loved working in a winery, and so she went from a kind of a regular STEM kind of job in chemistry to now working in a winery, which there was some overlap there, but a completely different focus on how she was applying it. And of course, some of the stories around relationship changes, women that have come out of abusive marriages and realized, finally got to that point where they thought, no, I have the strength to get myself out of this. I can start over. I can reinvent my life from here. So there's, stories like that as well.
I love the story about the winery. It was so coffee roasters and wine makers, I found to be very similar, right? So wine makers is like, I make wine, everyone else makes fermented grape juice, right? I mean, they're very particular about their process. And I had a client years ago who actually made coffee roasting machines. He grew up in Russia, was a chemical engineer, and when you went into the shop where, because he had roasted coffee you could buy, or you could buy roasters and, buy coffee by the cup. He had these pie charts of the chemical analysis of different types of coffee beans.
Wow.
So I would imagine that she would come in with just a very different perspective, but going from, I'll say, from STEM to STEAM, right? Science, technology, engineering, art, and math. right?
That's right.
So she was able to incorporate that, which is just, again, an inspiring part of the life that says to someone that, oh, I have this particular type of job, I fall into this box.
Yes.
It's not true. The walls are artificial.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, you bring up another series in my collection of books. My original career, I worked in medical genetics. So at the core, I am a woman of STEM. And so I knew that group of women has a very unique story to share as well, like you're saying, too, with the different career changes and opportunities. And so we're almost ready to publish the third book in that series. So the first one was Women Transforming the Landscape of Science and Tech. The next one was the evolution of leadership in STEM. And now the one that we're just finishing up is Women in STEAM, a global movement. So
Okay.
coming soon.
Reminding everybody, Cathy Dirksen, international top-selling author right here on Amazon. She's a speaker. She will help you get published. You can reach out to her. What I recommend, one of the things that you do is click on the books in the carousel. It's going to open up a new tab. Click on Cathy's name. That'll take you to her author page, and you can see the myriad of books that she has there. But the important thing to do is to click her name, follow. You can follow Cathy so that as new books are released, you'll get notified.
Oh, cool.
And so, especially with the series, and one of the books that is coming out, right, is next in the series. STEM, these things are important for people to understand that you aren't tied into a box, and these are the kinds of stories that people are going to find in your books, Cathy.
Yes, exactly. And the women in those books are everywhere from, teachers in the school system to literal rocket scientists.
Oh, that's fabulous. And so to remind people, you can just email Cathy at inspiredtenacity.com and find out about upcoming projects. You say, you know what, I've got a story I want to tell. I want to get published. I want to be right here on Amazon. I want to be able to just get on and send books to people. And this is one of the great things about these collaborative books is you do have a community that you're a part of. And it sounds like when people go through the process, friendships are developed as well.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So let's go into kind of this backstory.
Yes, and I love, yes, what you're saying too about friendships being developed in the community, and my collection of STEM books, I would say, are the group of women who have really stayed in touch the most. So with all of my books, I create either a Facebook group or not group, but chat, or a LinkedIn chat. Most of my books are on LinkedIn chats. And so all of the authors are in that chat group together so they can connect with each other, get to know each other. And even my first STEM book that came out about 3 years ago now, that group of ladies is still communicating regularly in that LinkedIn group chat. So if they're celebrating something, if they've got something coming up, if they're looking for information, they're in that communicating with each other. And I've even had one of the authors from Canada who just happened to be traveling for work to Australia and got to meet one of the other authors that was down there. So yes, we've got international connections and friendships coming out of all of the books.
One of the things that is great about this is everyone who gets published through one of your collaborative books is added to their body of work and added to their legacy, right? They have captured a story for themselves that will help others, but also it's just a part of those, part of something to hand down. I think, if your grandparents had written a book, whatever it was, you would cherish that today.
Yes. That is the other side of it, is that legacy that we're leaving with our stories. And one thing I love about books, especially physical copies of books, is that like 50 years, 100 years from now, somebody can pick up that book and sit down and read it. And obviously at that point in their life, there'll be a different perspective probably on the information, but humans don't change that much. So 100 years from now, I'm sure someone can pick up these books and get value from them then too.
You know, we even though the language has changed, we still read Shakespeare, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's some benefits to that. And over on Amazon, Emma just made a comment, says hello, and that she likes stories. Let's just talk about the power of story to not only entertain, but to inform and inspire.
Mhm. Yes, yes, and I find from all of those angles too that I think we absorb so much. I mean, humans storytelling is at the core of who we have always been. You know, right back to as far back in history as we can imagine. So passing on stories, hearing each other's stories, learning from each other's stories is what we do naturally. And especially for people who are entrepreneurs right now, being able to share your story completely changes how the world receives you.
Mm.
And from many different points of view. So if you look at one of my chapters or one of the books and say you're thinking about looking for a coach and you're thinking, well, there's so many coaches, how do I choose a coach? And then you read some of these chapters and you learn about somebody, you hear their story, what they've come through, what they've learned along the way, what their challenges have been, and now what they're doing and how they're helping other people. That story now can take you through that whole process of know, like, trust. Now you feel connected with that person, you feel like you can relate with that person, and you naturally feel like, oh, I need to talk to her. She's the one who can help me. And so really the power of having that chapter where it really is sharing all those different parts of someone's journey really just becomes a natural magnet to draw people to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's I will just say there's a certain maybe cachet, I will say is the word, when you go to an event and maybe you're going to be introduced as a speaker, and you know they say, and our next speaker is Cathy Dirksen, international best-selling author. You can find her book, and I'll just grab this one right here, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities, on Amazon. That raises the bar right there, right?
Oh, definitely, automatically. Yes, and you'll find too when it comes to like a lot of us are now developing speaking careers, and most people who are organizing speaking events, whether it's conferences, summits, podcasts, they tend to look for authors first.
Mm-hmm.
So even just having that word author in your profile puts you in a different category when it comes to who they're looking for. And yes, the level of authority and credibility that is assumed is massive.
I'm going to highlight two books, a friend of mine and both of ours, Russ Hedge. His first book was Befuddled, Live the Life You Choose, and he just followed up with recently Life Happens and Then You Choose. So one of the things that Russ found was some places they don't pay speakers, maybe they'll pay expenses, but they will buy a copy of the book for everyone that's in the audience. And this is another opportunity if you're looking at maybe making some money on your book.
Yes, yes. And I find not only is that an opportunity to make more, like to make some money from the sale of the book, but the fact that your book is now in the hands of all of those people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that is such an amazing calling card for them to be looking at and think, I need to talk to that person. And with all of my books, what I do with our Amazon proceeds, we choose a nonprofit. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of the Amazon proceeds from my books go directly to a nonprofit. So that's another way that we kind of pay it forward through the stories and then through the sales from the book.
So this is a great way to promote so many good things, right? So you've got the great stories that are there. They're providing inspiration for the people that read them, and then the profits are going into a nonprofit. And I think this is something that you guys choose ahead of time, right? When you're putting the book together.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about this book, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. This is another one that we've got highlighted in the carousel. And let me just remind people, Cathy Dirksen, international best-selling author. She is a speaker. We just talked about speaking and how having a book can just elevate that aspect of your life. We've got a few of the many books that she's published. Many are coming out. Make sure you click on the book, open up a new tab, click on her name, follow Cathy as an author. And when these new books come out, you'll get notified. And the great thing, again, about here on Amazon is when you hit add to cart, you can send it right to a friend. Maybe you got a friend that's going through some challenges. They need a little help. It's a few bucks to get a book to them. I recommend the printed book, and just send it to them. Just let it show up as a surprise. You'll be the hero. You'll be in conversation. I'll go, I had a book just show up in my mailbox. Really? What was it about? Well, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. Cathy, tell us about this book.
Yes. And this one was inspired by a podcast I was on. And the podcast was called Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. And I loved that title. And I realized that the stories that would go under that theme were so broad. And so the woman, so Candace Snyder is the podcaster who has that podcast. And so she and I worked together to bring in some of the speakers who had been on her podcast, and then other just community members that we brought together. And so really brought that one in. And actually this one has a really a great story too. Candace was telling me that this book came out last fall, so last September. It's been out almost a year. And she had given this book to her hairdresser a while ago when it came out. But I guess her hairdresser had put it to the side, like, oh, thank you very much. And, put it over in the corner. And then just recently this year, her hairdresser has been diagnosed with cancer. And she was going through chemo and had just come home from one of her treatments. And the book, she said she didn't even know how the book got there. She knew it had been on the pile for a while and she'd been ignoring it, but she turned and the book was right there and she picked it up. And here she was, recovering from these treatments and feeling horrible. And she picked up the book and started reading it. And she said it just made her feel so much better as she went through the stories and absorbed, these other what these other women in the book had come through. And so I just loved that story, how really the book found her when she needed it. It had been sitting there on her table for months, but it wasn't until she needed to hear those stories that the book kind of appeared right in front of her. So I love that one.
My internet is very slow, so I dropped my video and I'm just going to keep you up there, Cathy. And this perfect. Is Cathy Dirksen, top-selling, international best-selling author here on Amazon. We're talking about these books, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. I want to go into a little bit more of some of the stories in this particular book.
Yes. And one thing I love to do with all of my books, I tend to pick a title that is a broad enough theme that almost everyone has a story that fits into it. But at the same time, the specific words really hit home to different people. And in this particular book, where we got the passion, purpose, and possibilities, really any one of those three words could be the word that author really focused on. And others like to focus on kind of all of them together. And definitely there's been actually the oldest author in all of my books at this time is 85. And she is in this book. Okay. Yes. And what her story has included, she pretty much reinvented her life in her 70s she'd always had a career in the finance industry, but she had this feeling that there was more that she was supposed to be doing, that there was a specific way that she knew people had to understand the financial world. And so here she is at 85, still working, still getting the word out there, still helping people understand what they can do with their finances, how they can understand their relationship with money. And yes, here she is getting published. And one of the things that I've added an option for my authors lately, we've been doing billboards in Times Square. And so she is now a published author. She's been on a billboard in Times Square, and all of this at the age of 85. So I figure when I'm 85, I want to be doing that.
It's funny that I'm glad you brought up the Times Square, because I had thought of that earlier, and then it escaped me for the moment. This is a big deal for promotion. I can't think of a better place in the world to promote anything than Times Square. And this is not new to you. You've been doing this. Let's learn more about this.
Well, the first one I did was actually last January. So it's been about, I guess, a year and a half now that I've been doing billboards in Times Square. So I've done 3 trips now. So we did 2 last year, 1 in March, and we got another one coming up in the fall. And so really, I have opened this opportunity up to all the authors in all of my books to let them have, get themselves up there on the billboard. And like you say, being a published author kind of gives you a lift in your level of authority and credibility. But being on a billboard in Times Square, that one takes you up even higher. And I've talked to some people that live in New York, and they're like, those billboards, they don't mean anything being up there. But I would say pretty much everyone else in the world, just the idea of being on a billboard in Times Square is like a bucket list piece. And
it's an icon of American culture.
Yes,
and it becomes recognizable. But your authors are able to be there and actually get their selfies with that, right?
Yes, exactly. And nothing beats the feeling of standing on Broadway with your smiling face up above your shoulders, and taking a selfie like that you can't even describe it.
Your face 30 feet high. That's kind of amazing. So we mentioned that you've got a book coming up with Russ Hedge, this project. This is one of the projects that you're working on. And I just highlighted in the carousel that we've got the experience live with Russ and Scott, so people can learn more. You can listen to that podcast here on Amazon and learn more about Russ. He right now is in recovery. He just had, so Russ, for people to learn about, Russ Hedge is working with Cathy Dirksen on one of these group projects, and we mentioned it earlier, and Cathy will bring up some more details about that in a moment. But Russ has been going through a cancer journey, stage 4 melanoma, and just ended up having brain surgery just days ago. And so he's got quite a story, quite a journey. He's been involved in a number of books, international bestseller. So Cathy, let's talk about what it means to be an international best-selling author.
Yes. So in the Amazon system, to be considered a best-selling author, you're in the top 100 in the categories that you're listed in. And to be an international best-selling author, you have to have done that in more than one country. And so several of my books now we hit #1 in 5 different countries, which is exciting. And of course, like I said, bestseller is only top 100, but we always go for #1.
Yeah, and there's something special about being able to screenshot that and save it and make your mama proud.
That's right.
So put this up here. Let me just remind people that we've got that. Cathy is our guest here on Amazon Live. You can reach her, Cathy, with a C, at inspiredtenacity.com, and learn about upcoming book projects going on. We've highlighted some of the books here: 20 Shades of Grief, Midlife Reimagined, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. Let's talk about getting started. How do people get started, Cathy, working with you, and what's that process look like?
Yes. Well, to get started, you can go to my website. So it's inspiredtenacity.com. And one of the tabs at the top will take you to book projects. And that's got a list of the books that I'm currently working on that are open for people to
And
apply.
how many are you working on? How many are you working on right now?
I've actually got 4 that have spots open right now.
Wow. Okay.
And so, yeah, well, I like to have kind of a selection, and a part of it, like I said, that, certain words and themes really hit home with different people. And for a lot of us are entrepreneurs, so we really want a book with a theme that kind of matches with what we're doing in our business. And so that's why I tend to have a few different ones going on at the same time, so people can pick and choose which one really fits them best. And like I said, most of my books are just women, but I always have at least one that is men and women. So that's part of it too. So I've got those other options. And of course, the one with Russ coming up is men and women together. And so basically you could see the list of the current books that are options right now. There's a button there to book a Zoom chat with me, and we can talk about, what your goals are, what your timelines are, and pick the one that's best for you. And so basically I make my calendar available to all of my authors to use as they need. So some people are, very comfortable writing. They like to just go do their writing and send me chapters to review. Others like to do a little more talking at the beginning to flesh out, what their idea is, what they want to focus on, what their chapter is going to be about. And so basically I am available to help them with all those different levels of support as they're developing their chapter. And then once we've got their chapter to a good draft they're happy with, then that's when we take the whole thing over to our publishing team. So I've got a hybrid publishing team that I work with. And so we've got the professional editors that work directly with each author to perfect their chapter. Nothing, of course, gets published until the author approves it. So it's always your voice, your story represents you. And then they also create our marketing materials for us. Like I said, we do the full Amazon campaign, the bestseller campaign. And so it really is done for you.
This is important to note too, because many people, I think there's research out there that talk about the number of people who want to write a book, to want to publish a book. Don't know where to start. So this is a good place to start. But even then you say, oh, I can write one chapter and it's only, 2,500 words, 4 pages. It's, it's like, that sounds doable. And still they stare at a blank page. So you're there with them through the whole process.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that comes back to the community, knowing that you're now in a group of people who are mostly new authors as well. So that you're not doing this alone, and that everybody else in the group can relate with the challenge. And one thing I've found too that people often say afterwards is that there was almost a therapeutic part of putting their story on paper, and really that you have to go through all of it in your mind, and putting it on paper, redoing it, and really there's almost a purging that comes from putting your story on paper, and especially when we get to the point where you literally are releasing it out into the world. It's a feeling that you can't describe.
Yeah, they often say that authors don't finish a book; it escapes. You get to the point where it's time to hit publish, and I just got highlighted in the carousel and put that I do have a podcast, Publish Your Book, and it goes through different steps there. And I encourage people to go out to that podcast right here on Amazon. You can listen to a few episodes and then go, you know what? I'm just going to call Cathy. Cathy at inspiredtenacity.com. Get on her schedule and look at the different books that are going out there. But I'll tell you one of the best things, Cathy, for people to do. They say if you want to write, read. And if someone wants to get in one of your books, I'd encourage them. 20 Shades of Grief, Midlife Reimagined, and Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. We have those right here in the carousel. But if you click on those, it's going to take you to a new tab. Click on Cathy's name. You can look at the number of different books that she has there so that you can choose a book, start reading some of these chapters, and that's going to provide inspiration and go, you know what? I'm looking at the book projects that are up here. I'm looking at these other authors, and here's a story that I have. And then, Cathy, tell us what it's like when people just say, you know, here's kind of what I want to write. How do you work them through something that goes from a phrase to a full chapter?
Yes, and part of that is, getting on a Zoom and having that conversation about, they tell me a bit about the focus they want to have. They tell me a bit about the journey they've been on. What are those key things, those like real key messages that they want to make sure that comes through with their chapter. And so it is really a lot about talking it through and fleshing it out and then going back and forth with drafts and outlines and really fine tuning it until they're really happy with it.
I remember the first book that I published is back in 2018, and I was down at the coffee shop and I was standing in line, and I was talking to just some random person, and he just kind of asked me what was going on. So I told him what was going on, and he said, "Oh, you're an author." And, no one had ever in my life called me an author. And it took me aback for a moment. And then I said, I paused and I looked at him and I said, yes, I am.
Perfect. Yeah. And like you were mentioning too earlier, that the numbers that I've heard is that 92% of people have it on their bucket list to become a published author, but only about 5% of people ever do. Those are the numbers I've heard. And one thing I've really noticed too in my authors, I would say, a lot of people obviously fit into that category, but they've put that idea that they can become an author way on the back burner, thinking, well, that would be cool, but that'll never happen to me. Mm-hmm. And so now when they're standing with their book in their hand, and so it has happened to them, and kind of like you were just saying that, oh, wow, I am an author. There's almost a shift in what we feel is possible in our life by, going through this process and going from feeling like I'll never be an author to, wow, I am an author. And there literally is an internal feeling of, wow, I didn't think I would ever do that, but now I did that. What else is possible?
That's just a fabulous perspective. And I think, Cathy, this is a good place to wind up. We've talked about the books that we have in the carousel. We talked about how people can get a hold of you at your website and follow you right here on Amazon. Click on the books, open a new tab, click on Cathy's name, follow her as an author, and find out about the different books that she has available that are coming online. Go to her website, inspiredtenacity.com. Send her an email, Cathy at inspiredtenacity.com. And so, Cathy, let's just end on some great inspirational stories about some of your authors and what it means to them and how they've either just were able to check that off the bucket list or add more books to their shelf with their name on it.
Yes. Well, one of my favorite stories that I always love to share, one of my friends who I'd met through a training program that I was part of, she decided to join my first book, which was called Embrace Courage. And up to that point in her life, she had wanted to publish a book for a long time, but always felt like, oh, nobody really wants to hear what I have to say. Oh, there's, people just won't get it. And so she hadn't. And then she got published in my first book, and she got such great response of people that loved what she had to say and were really interested in learning more. And then she jumped into one of my other books. And then after doing the second book with me, she really got inspired. She went and published a solo book. And since then, she has published a second solo book. And now she's just finishing up her third solo book. And she started doing a YouTube channel out of nothing. And she's 75 years old.
Truly an inspiring story. And so I'll just say thank you, Cathy, for joining us here on Amazon Live today. Let's put this back up. Remember, top-selling, international best-selling author, speaker, Cathy Dirksen. Get published with Cathy. Click. It's going to open a tab. Hit add to cart. Get yourself a copy. Get a couple of copies. These are the kinds of inspirational books that you want to have. Maybe it's the 20 Shades of Grief. You want to have a couple of copies around because you're going to be talking to someone, and if you've got it on the shelf, they're going to say, I'm going through this. I'm losing my job, or I lost a pet, or something. And you go, hold on just a moment and go back and get that, and maybe write a little encouraging note in the cover. I guarantee you will be the hero. Cathy, thank you for being our hero today on Amazon Live. And I'm just going to say thank you, and we'll say goodbye to everybody.
Oh, thank you.